Wow, that was crazy. All right, all right, all right. My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel. I'd like to say I hope that you enjoy what you find in here. Take a look around the library, and everything that is stated in here is analytical and research based. I try not to speculate, even though opinion is good at times for an even balance on things. So I'd like to just give a little bit of group chat rules, even though there's not a lot of people that usually come in here. In case it ever becomes big, I'd like for everybody to understand that everybody's opinion is valid and we agree to disagree. So just try to remember that whenever you're chatting, that your opinion is valid. Everybody's thoughts is valid. Just try not to take it so personal that we start arguments or any kind of ill will towards each other, because we do want to get along and try to get the best out of the information that is presented. Today I want to talk about the IDAHO4. I want to talk about the hearing that happened the other day, the motion to compel. Um, Hopefully I have a couple people that can come up on the panel that can kind of discuss their understanding on the hearing and some of the things that we were told and that we heard. Um, because I didn't do too well in that portion of the criminal justice course that I was taking. Actually, I did take that portion this last semester, and I really didn't do all that great. But I'm going to do my best to try to understand what what the hearing was discussing and try to opine about it. I'm stealing that word from Detective John from the past um, live that he did. I like that word, opine. Um, so I'd like for you guys to follow along with me. I'm going to um, borrow Andrea Burkhart's live on the hearing, and I want to play 11 minutes of that, and then I want to discuss what she talked about, and even let her um, discuss her opinion on the hearing. So let's let's go ahead and watch that. Like I said, it's 11 minutes, so y'all be patient here with her. Welcome, Christy. Welcome, Rondi, and welcome. Love makes me smile, Lilacs. And any of you that are here, if you're here, say hello in the chat. If you're watching this on your TV, obviously you can't do that, but if you're able to, at least say hello in the chat. Let us know who you are and your position on things. So let's watch Andrea's take on this. Thank her so much for being able to make this video for us and give her the complete credit for this. So let's go ahead and watch this. If you haven't watched this, listen so that we can discuss this. Okay, it's going to be 11 minutes long. So I got that information from Sergeant Friday earlier, so thank him. If he comes into the chat, I'd like to bring him up, and I'd like to bring my new buddy AR Hayes up, and we can discuss this all together. Okay, here we go.
The state said we still don't have it. And then on May the 10th, the state responded to this request and said that because we provided additional information, Mr. Koberger's alibi, they need more time to do work on this cast report and they'll get it to us later. Your Honor, I think you ought to order that we get the cast report. And I think you ought to order that we get everything that went into developing this and we get the analysis that they make from that. This is particularly troubling. Their response, you told us something, so now we have to go reconfigure the CAST report. Let me tell you why that's troubling. Item 243 is our request. Give us a list of everything Nick Balance relied on when drafting his CAST report. And we were told Nick Balance relied on the call detail records from AT&T. Nick Balance relied upon tower records, and he relied upon the drive test data. Nowhere in there does it say, if you tell us anything about the case, we need that to rely on.
It'll change the analysis.
These are records that exist. These are tower lists that exist. They go into a program. You do drive testing to understand how the device interacts with towers, and you create a report. So we're asking the court to order that we get the CAST draft report, we get the full list of everything he relied upon, and we get the analysis of what does this mean.
So another clarifying question, maybe. So I listened to the testimony today, and that it sounded like a CAST report was provided, but maybe it wasn't complete.
It's the draft.
What Mr. Ray suggested. But I think that.
So the CAST report was provided, it just wasn't complete. Did y'all hear that?
But I guess maybe I'm guessing we're assuming that the state provided what they had, but it may be, maybe they're still working on it. I don't know. But didn't you get initially what they had as they characterized as the CAST report? So when you say, I mean, we have problems with language, I think, especially when we're in this area, technology.
Yeah, if you
And so
want
we
to
might
not
just going
understand,
back and forth like this without really understanding
you can find a language problem.
what we're asking for or what we're providing.
You can be really deliberately
Let me see if
dumb.
I can clear that up. The testimony today, when we had Detective Payne on the stand, when we talked about what did you rely on to get the second AT&T warrant, he said that there was something that Nick Balance produced and that the prosecutor had it, and he thought it was the CAST draft. And then you heard from Mr. Ray, who said, I've seen the CAST draft report, and maybe it's something different that Detective Payne looked at. It wasn't this big, long CAST draft. The CAST draft report, and I'm calling it draft because it's stamped draft. I knew it wasn't final when I received it. We got that because you ordered that the state give that to us last summer, last July. So I had this draft. I knew it wasn't final. Ms. Jennings knew it wasn't final. We've talked about it. We believed that we were going to get the final report by March 31st. We don't have that yet. It's the final report that we need. You also heard from Mr. Ray talking about the things that are mistakes in the CAST draft report. These reports go through a peer review process, and they can look a little different when they come back out on the other side. Usually not vastly different, but they can. They go through their process. It's that final product that I need. I need that. I need to know everything they relied on to do their work. I need to know what this draft report is going to look like. The court should know that when we get to trial, likely Agent Balance is going to come in and talk about his CAST draft report. He's going to be an expert in the field and talk about what he found and why he found and what he relied on to do that. I'm going to come in with an expert that's going to explain what his work did. Now, if the work aligns and Nicholas Balance and our expert aligns, well, that's just going to be shorter. But right now, it's definitely not looking like that. It looks like they're going to have their side, and we're going to be talking about what the data shows. So what I want is the final report that we were told would be available by March 31st. I need time to work on it.
Sure.
What I want is a full list of what was used to create that report, what was relied on. I have to be able to see if I can recreate that. I have to see what was right with it and what was wrong with it. So I don't have those two things, right?
Is it possible that it's just not completed?
It
It's
is
a final-
possible.
A final report?
It
You
is
need to get it
possible,
done.
but I need you to order that come to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think Ms. Jennings doesn't want to give it to you. But if you order that I get it, then I'm gonna get it a lot sooner, I think. I'm not saying that Ms. Jennings is sitting holding it on her back. I'm saying, I don't now know what's going on.
She's
The
saying you
FBI
need to light a
told her it
fire,
was gonna be in
Judge.
by March 31st. We hit our deadline to disclose our alibi. And all of a sudden now they need to redo something in their report, which shocks me because of the things they said that they relied on were things that already existed. So now I really need to know what they're relying on to do this report, and I really need to see the analysis, and I really need to see the final report.
Sure.
I have to react to it.
Since we're talking about this, Ms. Jennings, do you want to just respond to that? Whether or not this is still a work in progress or what's going on?
Right, Your Honor. As I know right now, that report is not in its final form. And it has gone through a peer review process. My understanding is it's still in that. I have been told, that yes, it's not a matter of,
Okay, my question is this. If that report is still not in its final stages, how did they use that in the grand jury? How was that used in the grand jury? Excuse me. Can y'all tell me that, chat? How was it possibly used in the grand jury indictment if it wasn't a completed CAS report? And the fact that she's asking for it over and over and over, and all she's gotten is a draft. She hasn't gotten any of the completed areas needed to show that Mr. Koberger was at these locations. In this hearing, it was found out that the 12 times was not even 12 times around the house. They misinterpreted or misled individuals to see that he wasn't even around the house. Or they were saying he was around the house 12 times. Let's look at the things that have come to light since these hearings have been going on, these motions to compel. Because what we're looking at right now is basically a preliminary hearing being presented to us step by step that should never had happened, because they went with the grand jury indictment. And now we're finding out that A, there was no stalking. B, the CAS report was not completed. C, that as far as the PCA is concerned, that Detective Payne didn't even write the interpretation that he had. He used two other people's interpretation to complete a PCA where he may or may not have understood what that language would infer when it comes to a person who was not even in the area. So tell me, chat, what do y'all think about that? I mean, granted, they can't just say, okay, these things don't exist, so we're going to let you go. But it's a total miscarriage of police investigation. You know, I believe that there was no corruption done. I believe it wasn't intentional, because corruption infers that that's intentional. That, you know, we intentionally misled you to try to get away with something. That's corruption. I don't believe that happened. I believe that this police department was so over their head with this crime that they didn't really understand the legality of getting certain things done, saving their work, because in the discovery process, it's kind of like in my field, if it didn't write down, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So we have testimony where the individual says, I didn't save my notes. What happened? What happened to your notes? I agree with you, Ro. Somebody does need to investigate this after the fact, because you know it could happen to any of us, and that's the sad part about it. It could happen to any of us, and if that if that happens, we're gonna have to show our innocence because we've already been considered guilty. We're gonna have A.R. Hayes coming up. I'd like to hear what he had to say as far as what I'm talking about. I dropped it. So it's really scary. It's really scary that this could go on, and people are so okay with it. They've been okay with this from day one. You've seen the inconsistencies. You've seen all this stuff, and people have been okay with it. And I don't understand why. I don't understand. Can you guide him to my channel, Christy, please? You know, people have been okay with this, and now we're finding out that behind the scenes, all this stuff has gone on, and they're showing us exactly the bit that are going on and have been going on. Let's welcome A.R. Hayes to the panel, guys. A.R.,
Hey, how are you doing, my friend?
how are you feeling?
I'm doing all right. It's been a little bit of a long night, but you know what? We're here. We're surviving, and I appreciate you taking the time and allowing me to come up with you, my friend.
Hey, no problem, man. Like I stated earlier, this wasn't my strong suit as far as my study, so maybe you might be able to give a little bit of insight that you understand based on your life experiences that could give, some kind of guidance to the chat as far as what may be going on in this whole process. Like I was saying, we found out that there was no stalking, that the Detective Mallory, the Detective Mallory lost his, he didn't save his notes. We found out that based on what Ann asked Detective Corporal Payne, there was no sighting of Brian Carr heading south on 95 on all those cameras. And
go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go
all
ahead.
those things right there, even before the next point you make, and I want to just kind of interject a little bit, because what a lot of people are, they're not putting everything in line here, is this was 2 hearings back to back for motions to compel evidence. So a lot of people are, they're kind of thinking this is a view of what the actual trial will look like, and it is a great view of the way Ann Taylor's going to conduct herself and how she's going to represent Brian and flow through the questioning of different witnesses, and it looks really strong. But you got to remember, in this sense too, this isn't a view of the battle of the experts yet. This hasn't actually got to the point to where we're going to be discussing real and true evidence, because it hasn't even been compelled yet. So I absolutely agree with your assessment. I was listening a little bit before I jumped up on, and I'm not one that pushes the full sense that this was intentionally, done in a manner that corruption comes into play. Now, can I say it's not? No, I don't know, but I want to err on the side of inexperience, lack of the working of these types of cases in the area. So you legitimately don't have a lot of experience. And even on the prosecution side of things, Bill Thompson is, even though he's death penalty certified as a prosecutor, he doesn't actually prosecute many of these cases. And the ones that he has, he's pled out in a plea agreement. So this is new to that whole side of things. Now, does that make it right? No. But what we're seeing unfold right now is the defense showing to the masses, and this is why they wanted the open court. They're showing why this evidence is so important to be compelled. Because if you can get people that are directly investigating a case to state the errors in the methods that they used to gain or garner the evidence against Brian Kohberger, you're at an advantage, because they're already, they're admitting, hey, we kind of cut a corner here, we messed up a little bit here, and that's what the defense is legitimately trying to jump on. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like that's where the attack is coming. Now, that doesn't mean at the end of the day, we're not going to have substantial amounts of evidence that comes flowing through the door, because in a case like this, they're going to have evidence. Now, I'm not saying the evidence directly points at Brian Kohberger, because we don't know that yet. We won't know that until the pieces start coming out and get spoken of. But these are some pretty critical pieces of evidence that I'm sure, a lot of the work was done within the FBI, and maybe they just don't have a real good working, relationship with the Moscow Police Department. So we're having some issues here. But this isn't something that, needs to be blamed on the actual defense or the attorneys, because this is how it works. This is what we do. Cases take time, and they go through a very long process before it's ever even deemed as capable of presenting into an actual trial setting. This is far away from trial. This is far away.
Let me I didn't mean to cut you off, AR, but
no, that's
my
great.
brain, as soon as I think of something, I got to say it, or it goes away. I don't know what's up with that, but
I'm with you. I'm with you, trust me.
A couple of things stick out with me, and they've always stuck out with me from the very beginning. It seems like there was a lot of tunnel vision in this case. It's almost like, I wouldn't say that they targeted him, so to speak, but I would say that the tunnel vision, once they got the insight on potentially all the things that they had wrote down in the PCA as far as this individual, whether it was true or whether it's not, they got that tunnel vision. And a lot of the evidence that was in the PCA was exculpatory. The evidence that the PCA is an exculpatory evidence all through it, because it's kind of, let me give you this example. It's kind of like this. Well, during this time, Mr. Kohberger turned his cell phone off. And then he goes and rationalizes his reasoning for putting that in there as evidence. Then he says, it's been my understanding as a law enforcement officer for this long and this amount of time, and this is what I've seen as criminals do this type of stuff. So he's already painting Mr. Kohberger as a criminal. even before he's even committed a crime or not committed a crime, he's already putting him in the criminal realm. Does that make sense, AR?
I understand. Yep, I'm following what you're saying. Absolutely. But what you
Yes.
have to understand too, so coming from a little bit of a background where I have a little bit of experience about this, first of all, the PCA is only going to give a few amount of details to utilize to try to get an arrest warrant. So they don't want to give up major pieces of their puzzle until they legitimately have to, because they understand the document. The PCA is going to be very public. It's going to be made wide and available throughout the court system, and anybody like you or I is going to be able to see it, because this is
Right.
the very first spectrum that's shown to the masses to show why they got this arrest. Now, through the investigation, because and it's hard to from someone in my background, because I want to know everything right here, right now. I want to know why I'm under
Right.
arrest. I want to understand what you got against me, and I want everything up and above board. But I also understand from my background, the investigation does not stop just because the handcuffs go on to a suspect. The
Right.
investigation
Exactly.
continues. And even right now, today, moving forward, this investigation is still taking place. So they're still accumulating more information, more evidence, more just even hearsay of people talking behind the scenes. They're gathering as much as they possibly can to assess, is there more suspects? Are there other people involved? Do we legitimately have a case against who we're working against now? And
Right.
as more evidence comes in, their case is either getting stronger by the minute, or they're learning more keys that could turn their eyes and their attention towards somebody or something else within that investigation.
That
So,
makes
in my
sense.
opinion, right now, and a lot of people are upset because look, we're deep into this. I mean, we're almost coming into the 2 year mark. I know we're a little shy of that, but
Right.
legitimately, we're coming into the 2 year mark, and not even big portions of the main evidence has been turned over yet. And I want to caution people because, of course, I mean, many people that watch my work, I really go at the justice system and try to hold it accountable, because I'm one that truly believes that if I, as a person that's changed my life from a criminal and a liar, could be transparent about the things that I've done, the things that I've hurt people with, I think our justice system should owe all of us as citizens the same transparency that they expect from us as everyday individuals. People
Well, I like that
expect
word.
me.
I like that word that you use, transparency. That is a lot to do with the criminal justice system, is the transparency.
I absolutely agree. So, in what I saw in the latest hearings, what would have made me feel more comfortable in what I was watching, what I was garnering from the testimony, and what was being said was just a truthful look, we made mistakes. We should have secured that audio tape. We should have secured that videotape. We should have protected it. We should have better logged it into the evidence. We should have been more organized what we were doing. But guess what? We were on the fly. We were trying to, get this into order because we had a full community that was at risk. We were really trying to get on top of this, and errors happened. That's all you got to say
Yeah.
to kind of defuse the way many of us feel is we're taking it step by step. We made mistakes, but we're working through those. And then I think some of us would be more accepting rather than someone saying, well, I just don't have it, or I don't know the answer to that. What do you mean you don't know the answer to that? You're the lead investigator. You should be putting your heart and soul, if not for the entirety of the case, but one, you're prosecuting Brian Koberger. So you have just put the cuffs on this gentleman for approximately 2 years, and you have pointed the finger at this man that he is guilty of a quadruple homicide. not only changing his family's life, but his very own. So you should take that pretty seriously, because if you feel he's guilty, you should put your life and soul into proving that. Now, on top
Very
of
true.
that, you ought to be on top of where your evidence is, exactly what that evidence is, and you should take pride in that. You should stand up to the plate and say, I'm so prideful of the work that we've done. We have this guy nailed. Instead, you're backtracking and pointing fingers saying, no, they did this. No, they did this. And I look directly at Payne, and I look at him and say, you were dictated as the leader. You were the man.
Right.
And you're pointing the
Yeah.
finger at other people for the things that they maybe didn't do appropriately. You should be taking accountability for all of that. You should just say, it was under my lead. You know what I mean? So
I totally agree. Let's watch a little bit more of the video, AR. That way we can discuss a little bit more.
sure.
You're putting out there some good stuff, man. Just hold on to it for a little bit.
Redoing it. But as they receive additional information, they just want to double check their work. They want to make sure that when they get the final report, it's
Oh,
accurate.
sure.
So we are still waiting for that final report to ensure that it's accurate. And as soon as we receive it,
Sorry.
So
Yeah,
you can
time
amend
frame
or
for that?
revise or supplement.
I told you when they expect to be finished.
I don't have a final time frame. They originally told us it was projected to be completed by June next month. So I'm hoping to get it within the next month.
You heard it. Now,
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Sometimes it's easier just to sort a particular issue at the same time.
Some of the hot ones, it might be, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I do think we have the regional tower list now, so I think we're good with that. On item number 220, 244 and 245, we have those documents now, so we're good there. Moving then to item 248. This is the drive test data, the mapping data. The court heard pretty extensively that we've received this in two places. We've received some early on, and then we received a lot more recently, but it appears to still be missing some. Asking the court just to order that we receive the entirety of all drive test data that was conducted by Agent Balance or anybody from the FBI. $249 is anything that exists after January 6th of 2023 for the drive test data. That's number 249. And so I would ask the court to order that to the extent that it exists. Would ask that it be ordered to be produced. Item 250 is the training and certification records for Nick Balance and Sean Kennedy relating specifically to the use of the Gladiator or the GAR. That's the item used to conduct these drive tests. Your Honor, I think that we gave the court a transcript of testimony of Nick Balance that occurred within the last year. And that transcript had highlighting on it, so the court didn't have to read the whole thing, but to look at how many times the training and experience was relied upon by this expert, and that expert's Nick Balance. And if he's going to be a testifying expert, the discovery rules allow for us to have their training. We asked for it specific to this Gladiator because we know that's going to be a big part of his testimony. So we're asking the court to order that we receive his training and certification records relating to the GAR. Similarly, now we'll talk about the GAR unit itself and its calibration records or its certificates that it's in compliance. The court just heard the testimony from Mr. Ray about how important that is, that often they get tired, things go wrong with them, and they get restored to service. We do have 2 certificates, but what we need is what Mr. Ray called the bookends, so we need the other side. We know that it came in non-compliant and then it was restored and went back out. We don't know what happened after it was used. We don't know the next.
Okay, so you heard her say what she said, but the one thing that I take from most of this, and a lot of people have watched the beginning of this whole motion, whenever she was examining Detective Payne, Corporal Payne, and Cy Ray, did you notice that the prosecution, they didn't dispel any of the testimony? It's almost like, you're right. You're right with what you're testifying on the stand. We don't have anything to really go against that. And I know this isn't a trial. I know that, probably they wouldn't do it at this phase, but surely they would have had some kind of questioning to make it look totally different. Wouldn't you say, AR?
A lot of times I want to agree with that, because I feel as though the prosecution, because this is a hearing to compel, they would stand and they would actually fight on why certain things wouldn't need to be compelled, or because that's what they've been doing battle wise behind the scenes in all of the paperwork motions to the court. So I would feel they would stand up and they would vocalize it. They would put it on the court records through, everything in the docket and, the transcript of the courts. But I also truly believe they didn't have experts there to do battle one-on-one with Cy Ray. Like, this was Cy Ray's moment to step up to the plate, speak to the judge, give the reasoning. And remember, again, the big focus of this is motion to compel. This is not testimony
Right.
like it would be in trial to help find Brian Koberger innocent of the charges. Cy Ray stepped up to the plate to actually speak upon the need for the evidence so that the investigation on both sides could be better done. The defense has to build an investigation into everything that's being utilized against Brian Koberger. That's why they bring on experts. That's why Cy Ray is there. They want him to go through this evidence and put together the puzzle which could help them defend their client. Now, Cy Ray at any point in time could get this information, put up his hands and say, look, I'm out of this. Like, I see what's in front of me, and I don't want a part of this. I helped you get the evidence, but now I don't want any part of testifying to this. And that's a very big option for him. And he left that quite clear within what he was saying. But at the end of the day, do I feel as though the prosecution should have stood and kind of gone with Cy Ray? It'd have been nice for all of us to see that. But at the end of the day, what's it going to benefit him? What, at the end of the day, you got to really break that down. And I know you're thinking, man, just like I am. We want to know why things are happening. Why wouldn't they attack that? Because they really don't have any reasoning to. And they know Ann Taylor could rebuttal anything that they ask or say. They come back with more firepower, which could even discredit more of what Bill Thompson or Jennings says, and just make their stance of getting that evidence even stronger. And how many more times do we want to see someone take the stand saying, we don't have that, we don't know where that is, Your Honor, that doesn't exist, that looks bad. So they're really trying to avoid that. You know what I mean? So they're minimizing how many chances.
Once we get through this motion to compel, then we're going to hit the motion to suppress. That's what's coming next in the series, So do you have any,
I actually think before that, I think we're going to get into some ideas of a Franks hearing before we get into that. And I'm not sure it's going to happen. And I'm not saying that it's going to go through with flying colors and benefit, Brian Koberger, because it may just get waved off and just not even, a part of what happens. But I think it's going to be looked at, and I believe that's why Ann Taylor was doing this so publicly within the courtroom, wanting this to be open, wanting these hearings to be with the testimony, because a lot of times in these cases, look, I've been around a lot of these, you don't get this in depth, you don't get this many testimonies prior, just at pre-trial hearings, you don't get this in depth. So
Yeah,
this was an
there's
attempt.
a law being shown. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ann Taylor is trying to really look from every angle, how can I best defend my client? And I think a Frank's hearing is going to be in the discussion, but you're absolutely right. She's also setting up, how am I going to attack a lot of this evidence to get it suppressed? And I've got to be prepared to be heard and have really good reasoning to be displayed that it should be suppressed, because the judge isn't just going to go in and suppress things because you ask for it. You better damn well have a good reason why it needs to be suppressed. And I believe that's exactly what Ann Taylor's working on. So yes, you're right. I think that's where we're heading pretty quickly.
Well, let's watch a couple more minutes of this, and then we'll discuss some more.
Bit of calibration that it went through. We don't know how it checked out. So we need the full copy, the bookend copy of the calibration reports.
This is still in 250.
That one is 250, yes. Sorry, Judge, I think that might have been in 251. That was in 251. 250 is the training records for the agents, and 251 is for the calibration records for the instrument. I apologize for that. 258 is a request for all information, all data, including all expert reports that the state has relied upon in developing the affidavits in support of all warrants.
But that's like a big one.
It's a big one. And the state responded with an answer saying, these are the things that have been relied on. I'll tell you what my concern is, that there are things maybe in computer files, things on somebody's desk that haven't been turned over yet. So I think the court ought to order that the state make sure they've given us everything that was relied on for every single one of the warrants. Ms. Massa indicated to the court, and I know that other members, I think Mr. Logsdon has indicated that we're going to have motions to suppress. And so we want to make sure that we have all of the information. Possibly it would answer questions so we don't have to have this. But
We don't have.
There you go. There's exactly what you just said, AR. They want the information so they don't have to ask for suppression, because they know exactly what they're going to get. And also, even before any of this happened, while Brian was first incarcerated, I don't think people really understand that the prosecutor and the defense attorney, once she was hired to defend him, walked through the crime scene. They were taken through the autopsy notes. They've been shown a lot of the evidence already, but the simple fact is they have to go over the evidence, and whatever the prosecution has that wasn't shown early on, it must be presented to the defense and vice versa. You just can't say at the last minute, oh, we're going to pull this out, and we're going to, this is the ace in the hat, and this is our secret weapon. And, so I believe that a lot of the things that, like you said, that they have as evidence, have not even been turned over all the way, because as we heard in one of the hearings, 95%, the prosecution said, well, we've given you 95%. So where'd that extra 5%, and what important does that 5% play in preparation for the defense? Care to discuss any of that?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. And I'm going to add a little bit to exactly what you just said. That, you know, we're talking about the 95% has been turned over, but that was the 95% back at that point in time. So you have to understand
Yeah.
they're still investigating, they're still gathering. So there's always still more to come. And this is a very protective, you know, reasoning that Ann Taylor's doing this, because there is times prosecution will hold back some very damning evidence till the very end. There's always the last minute time to compel evidence to where this is it. This is the last moment you're allowed to disclose evidence. And a lot of times the prosecution will wait till that very last deadline before they just throw the mountain and pile on top of the defense, because then they know it's harder for them to prepare for it. So
Right.
it's the same thing in the defense too. I know a lot of people are screaming and they're kicking feet over the whole alibi thing. I get that. I
Yeah.
understand that so many want that alibi, and even the Gonzalez family are still questioning, why are we not focused on the alibi? Ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't have to give an alibi. He does not even have to share a word if he doesn't want to. It just means he can't utilize a expert or people to testify to that in the trial as a defense. Doesn't mean they can't rebut the prosecution's experts that are stating that he's at a certain place or doing a certain thing. It's a very wise thing, and people have heard me say this. If you're a defendant in a case, say as little as possible. Just shut up and let your attorneys build your case for you. You know what I mean? Just allow them to work the magic, because the more you say, the more they got against you.
Of
And at this
course, your
point,
Fifth
Ann
Amendment
Taylor,
right.
that's right. Well, and you know, a lot of people don't know out there, a lot of the convictions that happen in these types of cases or even others is because you've given up too much information, your own self against your own self. So it's better
Yeah.
sometimes to hold back and just not say anything, rely on the law to handle what it needs to handle. And, you know, there's a September date for evidence to be turned over by the prosecution to the defense. I mean, that's going to be the end of the line? Probably not. I'm sure there's going to be an extension to within that, because we're still not even into the actual suppression hearings and the motions that are coming
No.
from all of that. We're a long ways away from the real battles taking place, and they're going to be interesting. But Ann Taylor right now is giving everybody the knowledge this is what's coming, including the judge. And the judge right now should really be looked at, because he's lacking in the capability of taking control of his courtroom. He's unsure of himself. He doesn't
Yeah.
have the confidence to put his foot down and say, this is my courtroom. I'm in charge. I'm making decisions. I'm setting these dates, and we're going to follow this. If you can't get into these dates for certain things, they're ruled out. You can't use it. It's out. And the only reason why I know that could happen is I've been through it. I've seen really strong evidence get thrown out the door because it wasn't presented or given quick enough, you know. And it's like, I'm waiting,
Right.
I'm sitting here, I'm watching this, and I'm tapping my foot saying, when is this coming? When is this judge going to take control? And hopefully it's soon. Hopefully it's soon.
It's kind of like what they keep saying. Was it sitting on somebody's desk? Where is it? Well, I'm sure it's not sitting on somebody's desk. I'm sure it's put away in a file where, like you said, they're just waiting and holding on to it until, he puts his foot down and says, okay, well, this is the last time that we're going to talk about this. If you don't hand this over, you can't use it as evidence against the defendant, and vice versa. So, if he had done this earlier on in the whole process, we wouldn't be at this point with so many motions to compel. Do you agree with
Yeah,
that
I mean,
or disagree?
I absolutely do agree with you, because in some of my cases, the judges have been very strict. Look, this is the time frame that we're working on. We're not trying to extend this out 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. There's an appeals process for a reason. So we're going to get all the evidence out here. We're going to get everything out on the table. We're going to do it in a timely manner. We're going to get this working through. And if there's no case at that point, you can either dismiss the charges and refile later if you feel like you need to, or we're going to get this to trial. And I knew, from the very beginning, there was a head scratching. Oh, look at that. They just jumped over the whole, preliminary hearing. And Brian at that point had not waived his speedy trial. And it was like, oh, here we go, because this is just, now we're going to be waiving the speedy trial. And then there's going to be a fight over that. And it's been this way the entirety of the case. And it's both sides. I mean, I'm not just pointing at the prosecution, and I don't want to do that. I'm trying to keep it very open-minded because I understand the system and I know how this works. The defense can ask for, obviously, extensions and moved back court dates and different things as well. But I mean, now we're seeing the motion to change venue is even moved back a whole nother amount of time because of the survey situation. So these are things that happen. And they add up. Every 6 weeks you move something back means here comes another motion filed that they need another hearing to hear about that, which takes another 3 to 4 weeks for that hearing, then another 2 to 3 weeks for the decision based on that hearing, and then there's going to be motions on that. So
right. It's I really don't see next summer as being the trial date. They haven't even really discussed like they even want to give a trial date, and that's one of the weaknesses as well as a trial judge, is he should be pushing for a trial date, because I mean, you have the evidence, at one particular point you either have it or you don't. It's either complete or it's not. There's been enough time for all the labs and all the places, all the professionals to go through whatever they need to go through. At this point, it's like, okay, you got it or you don't. If it's not complete, if you lost it, you can't find it, somebody stole it, whatever. Hey, you might have to go to the show without it, Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like I've sat down with quite a few people, and I get really engaged into the discussion of evidence because obviously, in my belief, the investigation builds a pile of evidence that gets all put in and investigated by even more people and then looked at by more people after that. And then it's handed over to a prosecuting attorney and they make a decision on whether they want to file charges or not based off of, the totality of everything that comes in before them. So I always want to see strength when it comes to the state side, because you've had all that opportunity not only to work your way through the steps of an investigation, but then you add all the steps of the interrogations. Then you add on top of that the different forces that can be brought in, looked at, analyzed. And you're telling me by the time it gets to the prosecutor's hands, he doesn't have an organized view to be able to just simply hand over, here's what we got. This is what we're using against your client. The defendant is guilty because of this, 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 and this. I don't even need anything more than that because this is what makes him guilty. And at that point, the defense should be able to take that evidence and say, well, here's where we think this error could be or this error could be. Now you're only fighting over what's already there. It's present because that's what's used to prosecute the very person sitting in the defendant's chair. Why do you put a suspect or a defendant sitting at a table in a courtroom already being pointed at as a guilty person if all of your ducks in a row don't lead to that very end result? I don't see the confidence of anybody speaking from the state side that can stand up in court and say, you know what, to hell with it. I've got so much right now. We're ready for trial, because that's what Bill Thompson, if you remember, rewind back, he was ready. He said he was ready. Then the very next hearing, he said, well, maybe summer of next year. And then the very next hearing, it was, well, shoot, we may have to push that even farther back. Why? It's because now it's being shown through Ann Taylor's due diligence. They don't even have all the work or the evidence back and finalized yet. Does that make sense to you? So
Of course
the
it does.
prosecution's
Of
gone,
course it does.
you know, you're taking this whole stance that let's just say it's you or me. I'm guilty based off of this fact, this fact, this fact, and this fact. Yet 3 of those 4 facts, you haven't even finalized the final bit of, everything that goes into that evidence. You don't even have the finalization of the reports, the tests, the digital, everything. So you're telling me you've found me guilty on a percentage when I need the totality of that to even be able to understand why you've charged me, much less found me guilty. Right now, I think many of us are scratching our heads because Ann Taylor's put it out there very well. How did you even get to my client, and why the hell is he arrested?
And those two
you
questions
know,
right there are important ones. They are very important. How
well,
did you
when
get
a
to them?
death, yeah, when a death penalty certified, well-spoken attorney can stand before the masses and say, I don't understand how you got to this point. And everybody, of course, because there's a fine line. There's guilters, and then there's he's innocent. Some jump on that and say, why would she ever say that? Blah, blah. Of course he's guilty. And others would say, well, I don't see guilt. I can understand what she's saying because it's not adding up. But why would nobody can say Ann Taylor's not intelligent? She's done
Right.
her studies.
Or that
She's
she's
worked.
not doing her job. Yeah.
Right. So if she's willing to stand there before the masses and admit, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of like you or I a math test and we haven't studied and we got to go before, the teacher and say, well, I got an F on the paper because I didn't study. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Well, that's exactly what Ann Taylor's saying is based upon your teaching, the prosecution's evidence, I don't get it. I don't understand why we're even here right now. Can you tell me? And then what we get when they're on the stand is, well, no, it was that person's work, or they have it, or I don't know. I'm not sure where that's at. Well, that's kind of scary because I just asked you to explain it to me, and you don't know how to explain it to me. At the end of the day,
Or
that's a problem.
you didn't save a copy of the test. You know what I mean? You just threw it away in the trash after you said,
Well, and
okay,
that
well, I'm gonna you didn't save your work.
think about back when we were in high school and we were taking a math test. If we just wrote down the answers on a piece of paper and we turned it in, and all of a sudden we got A+ on that math test, but we didn't show any of the work. The very first thing that came out of the teacher's mouth is, who did you copy or cheat from? Because I can't see what you did to get that answer. And especially when like 4 people in that same circle of seating all had the same answer on their test, but nobody could show the work. Well, now we're looking at an investigation, and you're telling me this is a quadruple homicide investigation. This is a lot of detailed work. This isn't just like your typical robbery or, a forged check type investigation. This is mountains upon mountains upon mountains of work. And you can't show me just the basic start of how you got to my client. Like, we're talking about the cash report. This is very important information, and you didn't save your work. You just thought that every time we needed an answer, you could just quickly enter it in and it wouldn't matter because maybe it's different than the last time. How do we know? We don't know. You're supposed to show us, you know?
Right.
So I, as a juror, I want to see the work. I just want to see the work.
And
You know, if
another
you
thing
can't
you
show it
said
to me.
earlier, AR, and you're bringing up a lot of great points, but something you said earlier that, as far as, you know, they have the evidence already. They just are hoping to hold on to a little bit of it till the very end. Do you think that the little bit of evidence that they do have that potentially could hold on to the very end, do you think that's damning enough to change the course that it's already been taken? Because I believe the course has already changed based on what we've learned.
You know, I'm kind of with you in the regards that I think that the defense has grabbed control right now of where this case is and where it's going, just in the evidence portion of this. Now, where I think that the prosecution could literally jump back into this race, and there's a couple of different ways they could do it. You could potentially have an eyewitness. You could potentially have people right around that have very valuable knowledge of what happened, how it happened, why it happened. You know, and I don't get into the whole creating rumor mills of it was his family or it was a girlfriend, or we don't know who it could possibly be. I'm a pretty firm believer that, you know, and I've spoken about it a few times. I think there's a lot of mouths that have spoken that have led to different things within this, you know, different investigation. Now, whether they're hearsay or they're true, we're going to find out, because there's legitimate witnesses and then there's hearsay that have just heard things and shared it through tip lines. So it's going to be interesting. Do I feel as though there's still something that could be very damning that comes into play? I do, if it comes back to a weapon. If all of a sudden, you know, something that we don't know, maybe they found a weapon, maybe they found a bloody piece of clothing, maybe something of real evidentiary value has been found and we just don't know. But if that were the case, I just don't feel like the defense would be battling the certain areas that they are. Like, if you think about it, if they found the murder weapon with the victim's DNA and stuff on it, why would we be battling about a video? Because they would have already found the legitimate piece of evidence that just ties it all together. And I hear people talking about, well, the tire treads outside the home. Okay, that puts him outside the home at the worst case scenario. It doesn't put the weapon in his hand, and it doesn't put, you know, the capability to get away with this with no blood or anything in his car or his home. So there better be something that just really pops out of nowhere. And that's the thing. Like, are we going to see a video just miraculously out of nowhere that has Brian Koberger walking in front of the home at the time of the crime? Are we going to see, you know, there's, I have a feeling there's a boom still left on the prosecution side. I do. I have that feeling. I just don't know what it is. But they sure seem to be pretty confident when they're willing to stand up and say the PCA is irrelevant at this point. This is irrelevant at this point. This is, well, what's relevant then? And they've got to have something that in their mind they think is relevant. And I'm waiting to see what that is. It'll be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Well, very good thoughts there, AR. Let's watch a little bit more of this, and then, you know, we'll get back to
Have quite as many motions to suppress.
Okay, thank you.
That's not a problem.
I understand.
All right, Judge, let's talk about the fifth motion to compel. That completed the fourth. The fifth motion to compel, we are not going to talk about the 15th request for discovery until this afternoon. So my comments will relate to the supplemental request for discovery, number 12, number 13, and number 14.
12, 13, 14.
Yes. In Request number 259, number 260, 261, 262, and 265. The state has let us know that these are coming. They responded on May 10th and said these are coming. They don't have a problem. So we're asking the court to order them to be disclosed to us. I think these are some that aren't going to be available for a while, but I think the court ought to order it. The state doesn't seem to have an objection to us having them. The order will mean we don't have to come back if something doesn't get through to us.
Okay, can you give me those numbers again, please?
Yes, I can. It's number 259, number 260, number 261, 262, and 265.
Thank you.
Your Honor, 289 related to communications between Detective Payne and the WSU officer talking about wide elantras. I believe that that's been covered. Payne testified today that we have the instant messages and there was only a phone call and that was it. So to the extent that that's the very end of it, then we're fine. And so I think we're on that one. Item number 299 is called a tips lead sheet. And that's something that's referenced during the course of in the discovery. We were asked for an example that was sent to the state. I'm just going to ask the court to order that that be disclosed to us. Number 300 relates to emails, notes, and other communications. The state's responded with 3 separate AV files, and I'm going to ask the court just to order that they all be given to us. We may have them all, but I'm going to ask that the court just order that just to be sure that we have them.
Look at Bill Thompson over there, AR. Has his hand on his forehead. You know, a boom that they talked about in this hearing, I don't know if people picked up on it, but Ann Taylor described the 2011 to 2013 that it's a vehicle that was seen on the camera. Do you remember hearing that part?
I do, yep.
So that is huge. That is huge. I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome that hurdle when it comes to trial. But I don't think a lot of people ever expected that because we've been told it's Brian's car. It's Brian's car. It's the 2015. We made a mistake. We were going to say it's the 2013.
Yeah, 13 to 16.
To 16.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah. So now we know that the car that was seen was a 2011 to 2013. The original car.
Yep.
So,
You know, and I
go ahead.
I threw a fit with exactly what you're saying, and you make very valid points that this is going to be a stumbling point when it comes to, you know, the testimony within the court, because you're going to have the expert that stepped up that changed it a couple of times, and then you're going to have the defense say, well, what video did you look at that made you change your mind? Because over here you said it was this, and then he went over here and said it was that. Are you sure it's even the same car? So I see the battle that's coming from this, and this is where I think an issue, and I've spoken about this pretty hard through the entirety of my time, you know, talking about this case, especially, you know, on the platform, is transparency is key. And I really feel as though from the very get-go of when law enforcement took the center stage in front of the microphone, speaking to the public in regards to the tragedy that happened, they didn't want to just put out the real, here it is information. And most times when you step in front of that microphone as law enforcement, you say, community, we need your help. We are looking for this type of car and it either has an occupant or occupants within it that we want to speak to. You don't put out a stock photo, because the only reason why you're asking about that car is you have evidence of that car. You got a video. You got something that is dictating that very car. We all knew right off the bat it wasn't an eyewitness that saw the car. We knew there was going to be some sort of video image of that car. And the reason why we knew that is they released that photo from the gas station that wasn't even the correct car. And then they put the bolo out utilizing the stock photos as if the car was at a dealership being sold. Their mistake was you go into the video of the car that you have, you take the best still photo of that car that you can muster with all of your forensics and all your digital enhancements. You get a still photo and you put that on the screen when you're asking for help of people looking for the car, and you say, this is the one. Look at the proof that we have the car on video. It's right here. We've got it. This is the one we're looking for. They didn't do that. They shied away from it, and they put out a stock photo because they didn't even know what year it was. They couldn't make out the type of car it was. So instead of getting in front of that press conference and saying, we're not quite sure, but here's a video of it, here's a picture, everybody call in and help us with this, they just started throwing out, well, it's a 2011, maybe a 13, maybe, okay, well, hold on, it's a 13 to a 16. No, wait, it could be all of those, right? We're just not sure. Maybe it's not even that right type of car. Maybe it's a Nissan Sentra. We're not sure. People help us. Well, that was a bad choice. That was a bad choice to do that, because if you're not willing to step up there and show the proof of it, don't even throw the bolo out. Don't even mention it. Leave it in the background, you know?
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You know, I believe that a lot of the speculations and everything that made people go wild with that was the fact that they put that one car out that wasn't even the vehicle, you know, and you know, in a lot of these other cases, you know, kind of like the Kansas City mom's case, the San Antonio case where the pregnant woman was murdered and the boyfriend, you know, those police departments, especially the one in San Antonio, they came out and they were very directive. They were very, as you said, transparent, and they gave you exactly what they had. They didn't say, well, we're still investigating. When Chief Fry was saying that, that meant to me that they're either uncertain of the evidence or they're trying to piece it all together. And like, I have spoken with another person, and it's almost like they arrested him and then worked the case backwards to make it make sense to him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I agree with you, you know, and I wanted to take just a quick moment because somebody did put out a good, you know, feel for how they feel in regards to the vehicle. Why would they put out the real evidence for the bolo? They felt as though the stock photo would make sense, as the real video is evidence. Well, you have to understand, an investigation like this, you have a community that is on edge because you have a quadruple homicide with the suspect or suspects still on the loose. The best way to tie your case up, and I've had this prior before, my own personal self when I went to court, and think of the issue that we're already seeing right now. The battle is already happening because they used a stock photo and they put out the wrong years and they put out all of this actual misinformation rather than just stepping up to the podium and saying, here's a picture of the car we're looking for. Now, you are, all you're doing at that point is you're putting up a still photo of a car that you believe is the suspect vehicle or involved in the crime. Now you're going to get tips to go find that car. I mean, why would you put up a stock photo? It's the same concept. You're looking for tips. but what am I looking for? Because people may not in the community take it seriously because they're looking at a stock photo. Well, how do I know what that stock photo is? Why do I think in correlation that that even matters? Whereas if I'm looking at the real, this is the image of the car that we're looking for, I take it more seriously and I say, okay, you know what? Let me think back to think if I saw that car in the area, was I around there at that time? Because that's why you're doing it. You're stirring up the community, not from afar, not people like you and I to say, yeah, I knew this kid that was going to college at Washington State. He had a white Elantra. I remember that. No,
Mhm.
it's more about the community that could have possibly been out at that time or in the neighborhood the day of, the day before. I've seen that car. God, where did I see that car at? Oh, it was on Linda Lane. I remember that car. I remember that. I'm going to call in. I'm going to tell them when and what I saw so that they could start looking deeper into that. And I'm not saying that, that the person that gave their feelings is wrong because it's absolutely that could be a way to do it too. I just personally, I like to see proof of things. Show
Well,
me
I'm the
what you
same
got.
way. I'm the same way. I'm the same way. And instead of looking for the stock photo, they released or they didn't have any qualms about the mainstream media releasing that photo of whatever type of car it was that was captured on the Exxon or whatever that gas station photo,
Right.
and people were looking for that vehicle. I went over hours and hours. I did a show on that last night. That's why it's so fresh on my mind. I went over hours and hours of different kind of cars to try to figure out what kind of car that is. And I've seen that ugly ass car before. I just can't place it in my mind for some reason. You know what I mean? And it
Yep.
has so many similarities of so many different cars that you do that on purpose so the public would not be bombarding you with false tips, or did you do it in hopes that it would buy you some time in gathering evidence without the public bothering you? Was that a red herring? Because they didn't come out and say this isn't the car. They didn't say anything
Right.
about it.
Well, and think too to go in with that, and somebody's actually right that the law enforcement didn't release the gas station photo. That was actually media that probably bought that
Right.
from the young lady. But law enforcement also didn't immediately come out and say discount that. That's so far off. That has nothing to do with this. They just kind of compartmentalized it, and let it fly. But then at the end of the day, too, you find the exact white Elantra in Oregon wrecked that you're looking for in a, it looks like it's been pretty hard ridden and
Yeah.
driven. And that would kind of make me think of, well, someone getting away from a crime scene or whatever it might be. They don't care about the vehicle. It just demolish it, dump it, get rid of it. And that makes more sense to me than a suspect driving the very same vehicle all the way across country, keeping it and, getting caught with. I mean, I would rather dump the vehicle than get caught with it. But, at the end of the day, it's like they discounted that one so quick. They made a quick little acknowledgement, like, we're not even looking into that. We're not interested in that car. And that to me tells me they'd already changed the date range of the vehicle they were looking for away from the 11 to the 13 years to now we're going to
Mhm.
open that up. We're actually looking between the 13 and the 16s, which does that mean that you've already actually seen Brian Koberger's car at that point? And that's the one that hey, I think we got it, we got it, we got it. And there's just transparency, man. Transparency. That's what it's all about. That's what we all strive for, on both sides. We expect the defense attorneys to battle for their client, but don't throw out shade either. You know what I mean? I mean, defend him by the law. Don't create a chaotic rumor mill of garbage that people are sifting through and getting attached to. Let's actually do this the appropriate way. He either did it or he didn't do it. And let's prove it if he did, and let's disprove it if he didn't. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly. And I think we will end on that point, AR, because we've already gone an hour and a half, and I did a 3 hour last night, so I'm kind of tired, but I wanted to get on here, and I appreciate you coming on here and giving your insight and your expertise on your personal situations and assisting me with maybe seeing or understanding something a little better, maybe helping the chat out as well. And some of the comment that we've gotten from the chat as well, everybody that is involved in these lives actually has a hand in, understanding. And that's what we're mostly doing here is gaining understanding, because we can't really change the outcome one way or the other, whether we're right or whether we're wrong at the end of the trial. It's not going to matter one way or the other. You know what I'm saying? So just
Yeah,
guys
but
in
we
the
used
chat,
to.
if you hit the like or subscribe, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Go ahead, AR. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I just wanted to say I'm definitely a big fan of yours, and we talk outside of just like this on lives. We talk back behind the scenes as well, and you've been very supportive of what I'm going through with my loved ones at the time, being ill.
Mhm.
So anything I could ever do, and I would love to have you over onto my channel onto a show in front of the masses over there. I've got a great community, some really amazing people with very open minds, and we
Okay.
discuss great things. And you would fit in very, very well, and I'm a big fan of yours. I'm a supportive of yours, and if there's anything I could ever do, let me know,
Hey,
because I'm all
I
about helping
appreciate
as
that.
much as I can.
I
So
appreciate that.
definitely,
I'm still a
yeah,
small channel, so to speak, growing little by little. But yeah, I will take you up on that offer. Just let me know in advance, because I kind of do one or two shows a week, or sometimes more
yep.
whenever I'm doing a lot of research on certain things. But I'm kind of slowing down on that because some of the stuff that's being brought out in these motions, they kind of put reality into what I've been thinking, and there's no need to put those videos out based on
Yep.
the reality being spoken.
I'm a firm believer, and I'm sure you've seen a little bit of my work, is I speak through emotion, and guidance through what I've endured to help open the eyes of people, to help them stay in the middle, stay unbiased. Let's talk about things openly, and that's why I think you and I do so well. Is we're not just directed in one direction. I'm more willing to talk
Right.
about what could be possible for the prosecution and things of that nature as well. But I also am reserved. I don't put out as much content as many out there do. And it affects me a little bit when people point at me and say he's doing this all about the money. He's doing, and that's
Yeah.
not why we're here. That's not the ultimate scope of what we're doing or why we're doing it. I want people to better understand from an actual experience background. And the only way I could do that is to share what I've been through, which is different than many others. I mean, it's far different than what you've been through, what Brian Koberger's going through,
Mhm.
but I can give a little bit of light. And that's why I appreciate you, my friend, for having me on today. I know you're a hard worker and you spent some good time last night. So thank
Yeah.
you for opening your door to me and allowing me to come in and share some good conversation with you.
Hey, no problem, man. I'll keep your wife in prayer, and if you need anything as well, just how to reach out. So I'll be on Swamp Roses live tonight. I think it's at 7:30, 8:30 maybe. I'm not sure. But
I'll
y'all
be,
head on
yep.
over
Oh,
there, and y'all head
and
on over
I'll be
there and
heading
give her
over.
some support.
Yeah, most definitely. I hope everybody joins you guys. I'll be over here in a couple of minutes. Dinky will be going live, so I'll be heading over to Dinky for a little while. So it will be a good time over there as well. So we're going to dive into some more of the fun and the shenanigans. And I just want to say before I leave, Shelly Klein, you are amazing. You are a personal friend. I adore you, and I'm thankful that you ventured over. She actually subbed to you, and you're going to love her to death.
Okay.
12 gauge. You're
Okay.
going to love her to death.
Well,
And
welcome.
I see a
Welcome,
lot of people
Shelley.
in your chat. Yeah. So
Okay. Well, I usually close
I-
mine out. I usually say, Maestro, cue the music. I don't know if you've ever caught that, but I think it's going to be at 7:30 tonight at Swamp Roses. I'm not sure. I think 7:30 or 8:30.
Yep.
I'll do a community post on it once I find out. So I know you got somewhere to go, AR. Thank you so much again, and we will talk soon. Okay.
Yep. And I'll see you later tonight as I'll be in chat supporting you guys.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye bye. All right, guys. It's time for me to cue the music, but thank you all in chat for staying with us and giving us your insight. Head on over and check out AR's channel if you haven't already. A Convex. Good grief. My mind went blank. It's called a Convex. Thoughts with AR Hayes. Sorry about that, AR. My mind went blank. So you guys have a good evening, and I'll see you soon. Maestro, cue the music.